First things first, I want to preface this with a little I might be stupid warning. I'm just a high school student with zero professional experience, and while I don't think it'll affect what I say here, I'd greatly appreciate any feedback for things I don't understand, got wrong, or didn't mention. Now, C is a language I love to pretend I like. Anyone who's written C a couple times probably feels the same way. Writing C feels good. Something about always hearing how hard C is makes a simple hello world in C give this rush of hey, I did the thing. The reality is, that's not why C is hard. Everyone who's written C knows this, but the more you think about it, the less fun C gets. The real reason C is hard is because it's hard to know what's happening. A crash in C is usually the best case scenario. Why'd your code crash? Well, you probably accessed some memory you weren't supposed to. Your OS sent a SIGSAG V and your program crashed. If it didn't crash, I sure hope your IDE has a good debugger, otherwise there's going to be a whole lot of printf. The thing is, I think this is a good thing. C is the perfect language for understanding the way a computer works, for anyone who doesn't use C. A Python programmer, a Java programmer, a Go programmer, even a lot of Rust programmers usually don't need to understand more deeply than C. That being said, C programmers definitely do. If you write C every day, you'll eventually find yourself wanting to learn, or at least understand assembly, and from there, probably want to understand physical hardware, and from there deeper and deeper again. What I'm arguing for is that the average person should always learn C, but should never use it. Of course, this is only the average person. OS devs, embedded system devs, hardware or firmware engineers, compiler devs, etc., they should all definitely use C. But why should the average web dev learn C? Well, because the average web dev is still a developer, and should strive to understand the code that they write. As nice as "it just works" sounds, that's not the reality of programming. The reason it just works is because someone, somewhere, some layer deep in your 50-layer build system for a static web page wrote some code that made it work. And if you can't tell me why that code works, you probably don't understand your language deeply enough. I'm not saying you need to dive into the V8 source code. I'm just saying you need to understand stuff like how memory works, what the stack is, what the heap is, what a buffer overflow is, and why garbage collectors can be bad. But not just that. You should also understand why garbage collectors can be good, why it's nice to not care what's on the stack or what's on the heap, and why things like exceptions were created. These things exist for a reason, and they're great. To some extent, the world already works this way. If I had to guess, the average professional dev would understand what a pointer is. They might know the fundamental idea of allocating memory and freeing it later. But if someone has only written a high-level language their whole life, are they going to know what a double free is? If they do, will they understand why the language doesn't just give them a little exception they can catch? Will a JavaScript dev know why this is weird? Or why it's weird to set a primitive to null? Does a Java dev know why objects are reference types and primitives are value types? What about all of Python? Rust automatic dereferencing is nice, but anyone writing Rust should realize that's not how pointers work, and that a Rust reference is its own thing. They should understand that if you make a pointer to a value in C, you need to dereference it yourself. It's called an automatic dereference for a reason, but it's easy to take these things for granted. My last video was about how functional programming in Java is a lie. It's a pretty basic video, but it provides a lot of insight into the way the language works. I've shown the same example in the video to many of my Java dev friends, and the reaction is usually pretty similar. It's a mix of, that's stupid, that's interesting, and why? Which is exactly the point. If you watch to the end of that video, you'll know how I feel about it, and I think that ties in nicely here. Sure, it might not affect how you write your code directly, but the indirect knowledge of what's really happening under the hood is really useful. It explains every weird thing you might have noticed. It gives you a new outlook on your code, and it gives you an appreciation of the giant whose shoulders we desecrate with our horrible web apps. But why should nobody use C? If I've just spent the past 5 minutes or so talking about what makes learning C so great, why on earth would I turn around and say don't use it? Well, honestly, writing things in C kinda sucks. I mean, there's a reason modern C-based stuff feels kinda novelty. That's because it's really hard. I could not, in good conscience, tell people to write their own apps in C. Not only is it complicated, it's vulnerable. This isn't to say that nobody can write good C code, or that Rust should be the only official language for low-level apps, but There's a reason people love Rust. Memory safety's hard. But again, safety isn't the only reason not to use C. In C, there are no built-in errors. Instead, many functions return an error code signifying if something went wrong or not. And while the system is still used plenty today, especially with -1, it's extra annoying in C. Furthermore, C has a lot of strange ways of doing things. To list a few, macros can be nightmares, function pointers are ugly, type tests are confusing. Don't get me started on unions. Everything is in the global namespace. The .h on header file should probably stand for headache. Longs aren't real. Long shouldn't be real. Int max isn't the max int. Arrays only halfway exist and sometimes collapse down to pointers. Everything is platform dependent, and every attempt to change that only makes it worse. Why the hell does static exist? Booleans aren't real. Half the keywords are never used. Runtime errors don't exist, thus no try-catch blocks, and there's pretty much only one way to crash a program. The entire existence of strings are just syntactic sugar. I could genuinely keep going for a while. All in all, understanding C is important, but you're better off without actually getting too into the weeds. Keep writing your JavaScript, Python, Go, Rust, Lua, or whatever you like, but keep in mind what your code is actually doing. Well, that's all for this one. If you enjoyed this video, I'm glad. Like it if you wanna, subscribe if you really wanna, and comment if you're feeling nice. Be sure to give me any feedback. I'm still brand new to this. This is my second video, and I'd love any advice, or should I say pointers. I put a wink in the script. I don't really know how to say that with my mouth.